The picture up.
I do. Look at that picture. That picture is great. Isn't that phenomenal? Ladies and gentlemen, that's the great Darwin Cook. Come on in, folks. We see you out there. It's time for the ZimmCast. Don't be afraid. Come on in. Want to talk about the power of comics, and who better to show that off with than Darwin Cook, the late, great Darwin Cook. Did a little bit of everything there. Those are some of the characters that he worked on over the years. Just phenomenal. We're going to cover, I've got a great art book by Darwin Cook I want to cover on the Friday morning show. Right now, this is the ZimmCast. We want to talk about the power of comics, folks. Power of comics. Going to have an opening that we're going to run, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to start with my network opening, I think. Here we go.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
That's right. Let's everybody get mad. How you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, come on in. We see you out there. Efren's in the chat already this morning. So used to doing those morning programs. This evening. Hello. How you doing, Efren? Glad you're here. Happy to have you. We want to talk about the power of comics. I'm your host, Randy Zimmerman. I've been doing this for a long time. Not podcasting, but doing comics. Been alternative and independently publishing comics for many decades. Arrow Comics, Caliber Comics, Antarctic Press. Done a lot of freelance work in my time. I do a lot of commercial work that involves sequential art. Now we're back doing Arrow Comics again. Just saw a couple pages from a book that I'm having recolored, and it's pretty.
It is.
It is. It makes the book look so brand new and so polished. It's amazing what a coloring job will do to just, and the artwork was already spectacular. It's not mine, so I can say that. It's spectacular, and I can't wait to show it to you. I'm thinking about crowdfunding it like an entire Arrow tier so that I can showcase this book, because even though I've only seen 2 pages from it back from the colorist, it is amazing. Just crazy amazing. It's going to be fun. A lot of
Can you
fun.
tell us who the colorist is, or is that a secret?
It's a secret. No, okay. We'll hold off until a little bit more goes along. I might just be talking out my my rear end. Well, no, not really, because it's amazing. Same guy who colors hybrids, Patrick.
Oh, okay.
The guy who colors hybrids, but this is a whole different feel of book. It's a brighter, and it's more fun. It's just going to be, it's going to be a great title. Greetings from Peru. Greetings. And I'm up here in Flint, just south of Flint, Michigan, in the USA. Mitch is here from where? North Carolina, right? Or is it South
South
Carolina?
Carolina.
I know it's a Carolina somewhere. Pat, where are you from?
I'm from Ottawa in Canada.
Oh, sweet. So we're farther north. You're farther north
Yeah.
than me. That's awesome. All right. Folks, like I said, I'm your host. Been doing this a long time. Thanks for tuning into the ZimmCast. We're going to have a good time tonight. Also with me today is Mr. Mitch Rogers. Mitch, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mitch Rogers. As Randy said, I'm from South Carolina. I'm the creator of the Boger comic book series, a series of horror comic books about a demigod of vengeance. I have the first two collections. Southern Gothic, which was just released, is now available on my website, which you can find at linktree/Celtic Cross Studios.
Sweet. Also joining us is Pat Murphy. Pat, introduce yourself.
For sure. I'm Pat Murphy. I'm the creator and owner of the Echoes of the Triumphant series. Just launched the Kickstarter as of now. Basically, it's a series where there is superhumans, but there's just no Caped Crusaders. So it's a really grounded take on what it would like to what it would be like if there was, superhumans out there. And yeah, I've been doing this for a little over a year now, and yeah, it's just it's a cool side hobby.
So you only been doing comics for a little over a year?
Yeah, that's right. I'm on issue. We're just launching our third issue right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll look at your campaign here in the second half of our show. But first, I want to talk about the power of comics. So there was there's been discussions online lately of the about comics and the ability for comics not just to entertain but to inform. And I was kind of hoping that Brian K. Morris was going to be here along with us tonight. He said that he would probably have a hard time waking up or staying awake this late at night. I'm sorry that he can't be with us. But the big thing that I want to promote today is how great, not just how great comics are, but how powerful they are and how much of an influence they've had on society, and a lot of influence we don't really realize, and how the older comics, the greater comics were such a driving force for people in entertainment. You see so many celebrities out there, so many writers, so many artists out there that are influenced by sequential art, by comics from all over the place. Up in Canada, I know the independent comic scene is a lot more respectable, or respected, I should say, not respectable, than here in the States. We still have this stigma that we're dealing with since the 50s, that comics were always made for kids. And they just dismiss the comic artist, the sequential artist. It's always been a little bit looked down on, as the art form is considered to be kiddie literature for the most part. And even though there's billion-dollar movies out there now, there's still a lot of people out there that don't respect that the ability of comics.
Exactly. I find that especially funny since a lot of kiddie literature, quote unquote, seems to be very highly respected in winning awards, but comic books are looked at as like the bad kiddie literature. Just look at stuff like like Harry Potter, which was like a kid's book that kind of drifted into the YA style. There's movies based on it. There's all this other stuff, but for some reason, comics. Yeah, Dr. Seuss is another example. There's college classes that just study Dr. Seuss, but for some reason, comic books, to the same people that praise Seuss and Harry Potter, I mean, all these like groundbreaking pieces of children's literature, look down on comics.
Mm-hmm.
It's strange to me.
Ryan says, thanks, Ryan, for listening in. Life is better when reading comics. Facts.
Mm-hmm.
Says reading comics makes you appreciate the characters and their legacy. Yeah. There's been a lot of great characters, a lot of icons, a lot of brands. Some of them anymore, they're just over abused, I think. that are out there in the corporate run comic world, your Disney, your Warner Brothers, that kind of thing. They have such little respect, and the people up there working have no, for the most part, have no real idea of the actual power and the ability of comics, not just to entertain, but to inspire people to do some incredible work. And that's the way it's always been, I think, since the 60s and 70s. It was such an enclosed group of people that were allowed in. I mean, it was lucky that Roy Thomas was able to get into Marvel when he did, and he did so because he was such a huge fan and had written so much fanzines, so many fanzines and fan literatures, and just kept pounding on Marvel's door until they let him come in, and Stan let him do some work. And that's what really opened up the door up at Marvel. But in the meantime, at DC, it was pretty much who you knew. And if you had a buddy that could draw well enough that, you know, they could get work up there. But they really didn't start looking for talent for a long time up there. And there's a lot of folks that have gone into other forms of media, you know, that weren't able to get these jobs at the large comic companies that have loved to have done comics and would have been happy to do comics the rest of their lives, but they were passed over because they either didn't have the connections or didn't couldn't you know, the timing was wrong or whatever. I think there's a lot of people out there that grew up in comics that would have loved to have kept doing comics. Even Stephen King did Creep Show for a long time. That was did a couple issues of that. That was comic book for him because he loved those old EC comics when he was growing up. You know, Spielberg is the same way. Lucas, if Lucas hadn't gotten the rights, if Lucas had gotten the rights to Flash Gordon, he wouldn't have done Star Wars. He'd have done Flash Gordon instead, and you'd have seen Flash Gordon done instead of him having to sit down and create a whole new universe and do his own story. I'm kind of.
I hope you don't mind me chiming in. And
I want you to chime in, Pat. Let us talk to us.
Sure.
What's up?
Just back to your point on like, you know, people taking comics more seriously in Canada. Like, I really agree with that because I remember, you know, it was part of our school curriculum that we had to, you know, study like the Mouse story. So, you know, that was a pretty amazing thing. You know, that was, like I don't remember the whole story off the top of my head, but basically it was just about this guy's not recollection. I think it was just inspired by his grandfather's stories. But,
yes,
it was
Art Spiegelman. Yeah.
And so,
I believe
like,
he won a Pulitzer Prize off of that as well, off of doing Mouse.
First comic ever to win a
Pulitzer. And it was taken way more seriously than like a kid's sort of like comic strip and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's more than fair to say it's taken a little bit more seriously in Canada. But like, I mean, one thought that comes to mind is that like things aren't taken seriously until they are taken seriously. So, when you think about Superman, for instance, like, you know, he's kind of like a Boy Scout and kind of, you know, like a too nice of a guy, but he becomes like a very, very important character to people when they're going through like very, very dark times. So I read this testimonial from somebody who read All-Star Superman, like the 8-issue series that Grant Morrison did. And she was writing saying like that story basically saved her from like a huge depression. So it saved her life. So yeah, it's in my opinion, I think that comics is like that kind of weird medium where it's not important or taken seriously until it is important and it's taken seriously.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go, Mitch. Go ahead.
It kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard the debacle around the World Fantasy Award.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, an issue of Sandman. I think it was 19. If I recall correctly.
I thought that was the Nebula Award.
Could have been. It's one of the
Yeah.
like main literature awards for speculative fiction.
For science fiction. Yeah.
And Sandman 19 won the award, and then like enough people were pissed off about it because it wasn't like short story, like best short story, and enough people were pissed off about it that like the next day they changed the rules to where a comic book can never be nominated again.
Yeah.
Because enough people were pissed off about it.
Well, I found a lot of those science fiction guys are, kind of snoots anyway. Yeah. I remember doing a science fiction gaming convention and being sequestered off way to the far end of the hallway or put into a different room way in the back behind the huckster's room because we did comics,
Yeah, which is weird because how many science fiction fans also read comics? I'd argue most of them.
Most of them, if they didn't, they started out doing it because they were looked at it as, kids literature. Adam Strange and, the Strange Adventure stories, the old science fiction shorts, the 8-pagers. Even you go back farther to those EC books, those great ECs of weird science fantasy. Just phenomenal. And it got to the on Weird Science, they were adapting Ray Bradbury short stories to into comic book form to the point where Ray Bradbury said, "Hey, look, if you're going to do that, just give me credit."
Yeah.
Next time you want to rip off one of my stories, just give me writing credit on that. All right. So.
Yeah, and how did he find that out? He was reading the books.
Again, yes. Yep. So from there on, whenever they adapted one of his short stories, they blasted it on the cover. This issue. Special adaptation by the great writer, Ray Bradbury. Yeah. It's amazing stuff. But again, that's because comics in the 50s, comics were starting to grow up. We're starting to see comics aimed at an older audience, even though a lot of the moms or the parents didn't quite understand it. You had Crime Does Not Pay, which I've got here on the top of my rack, and all of those great old ECs that weren't aimed at kids. They were aimed at older teenagers and a young adult audience that were just amazingly well done and literally raised the art form up to new levels until the Senate hearings here in the States, and they ended up bringing in the Comic Code Authority, which kept comics kind of dumbed down, at least the comics that were going to the spiral racks.
Yeah, and most of those rules were specifically to put EC out of business.
Well, EC and the Charles Burroughs Company, because the ECs were selling millions. Burroughs was selling millions of copies of Crime Does Not Pay every month. And those were true crime stories. Exact same, if not a little better told than a lot of the true crime channels you see on cable nowadays. And the whole point of doing Crime Does Not Pay was to show that the bad guys got it in the end. And that it was usually a violent ending to their
crime
careers.
Doesn't pay.
Crime does not pay.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thunk it? But back then, they were getting all upset thinking the kids were reading all of these stories, and it was really growing and expanding the comic reading audience, the comic readers that come out of World War II when there wasn't TV and there wasn't, you had to literally go out of your way to go to the theater, and when there was rationing and things were hard to find and entertainment was incredibly difficult. You had the radio, you had pulp magazines and magazines that might be entertaining, but you had comics. Comics were out there just inspiring everybody. I mean, they kept the troops going, and you get into the power, the ability of comics. You look at Captain America #1 and what that did at the time, and made a huge political statement, because at that point we weren't into the war yet at all, and yet Simon and Kirby decided that they were going to have their character smacking Adolf on the cover, and that was a big deal when that first came out, and everybody was stunned. Comics, and then now you get up there in the modern companies and they tell you that comics have always been propaganda, and that's not true. Comics have always been entertaining. Even when it was propaganda, it was entertaining. They told a story, they entertained people. People love those comics, and we've all got our favorite comic book stories. And I do a program on Sunday morning where we try to encourage, people to talk about their favorite comics and the comics that's inspired them, that's makes them do what they do. And it's amazing the people that have been influenced by comics, especially the older comics back in the 50s and 60s, even the 70s. A lot of people in entertainment, in a lot of the different entertainment fields, were all big comic book readers. So it's the key, I think, to stretching the imagination. Even after TV came in, I mean, there's stuff that you can do on the comic page that you still, would have to pay a high budget to a graphics designer to put into the computer to do today. So, help me out here, Mitch. Give me some examples.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, I was gonna mention something like just about I guess it's just a bit of a tangent, but in terms of like the power of comics, like I think it's just as powerful as like any other art form, because it has like the ability to help people like change their minds and change their positions on stuff. So like for me, example, like I wasn't like a huge Punisher fan because I was a fan of Daredevil growing up like crazy, and he was always like a protagonist to Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came across like some of his comics, and it was really really eye opening, because like they really talked about what happens to veterans, and what happens in the military communities and stuff like that. And man, they go through a lot. Like they go through their wars, they do their service, and they come back to society, and they don't really get the help that they need. And like they come back with all these like physical injuries, these mental injuries, these emotional injuries. And it's just like it was a real eye-opening experience just to like read like Punisher comics. So I think the real power to it is just its ability to help people change their minds, and like open their minds up to different things. Because yeah, like I guess when I was a kid, like, because I didn't come from a military family like whatsoever, so it wasn't really on my mind that much. So yeah, I think that's one of the most like amazing things about this art form.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to EC, a lot of at the time social issues were put into those books. Like, there's a lot of stories that focused on spousal abuse, racism, anti-Semitism. There's a really famous story, I think it's called Hate, that was in Shock Suspense Stories. That was a really eye-opener, not only at the time, but for myself, about the nature of a true bigotry, not what everyone calls bigotry nowadays, but true hate and anger towards other people. And then sometimes that can come back in true EC fashion, bite you very violently.
Well, that was part of the fun of the EC books,
Yeah.
and they were socially conscious. It's amazing to sit back and read those now, and that's something that's you hardly see out at this point. A lot of the EC reprints are very hard to come by, difficult to dig up, but it is incredible reading. Same thing with the Crime Does Not Pay stories. Very adult, and some of them are incredibly violent. But on the other hand, if you ever want to, read a true account of some gangster that was running around the Midwest robbing banks and ends up with his, in a violent shootout with the cops because they've just had enough and they're not going to go, they're not going to go or be arrested, then that's the comic to read. And Dark Horse has got a book out, collection of those of Crime Does Not Pay stories. Some of those are majority of those are all in public domain anymore. I mean, the copyright on them has lapsed so much, but they're still incredibly good reading.
You can just talk about the power of inspiration. If it wasn't for Harvey Kurtzman's Mad, we wouldn't have had the underground movement, at least not the way that we had it.
And Harvey come out of those ECs as well. Gaines had such a great way of finding talent that it's an amazing case study in comics history, how he was able to attract all of these great artists working for EC. And then when the Code Authority does kick in and he tries to do magazines, and he can't quite keep the magazines on the stands except for his humor magazine, he turns his attention to Mad, and then attracts a whole nother set of incredibly talented artists. We're going to hopefully look at some of those real soon at a episode of Comics by Night on Friday mornings. So that ought to be a lot of fun to do. So thank you. That pregnant pause was brought to you by the ZimmCast for the 7th of December. Deeply appreciate everybody watching and listening. Chat's open. How have comics influenced you? Let me know. Put that in the chat. Let's talk.
Well, I know how comics influenced me. It influenced me to want to make them.
Uh-huh.
That's probably the biggest thing I can say about it.
Well, I grew up in a very repressive household up in a very small town just northwest of Flint. And comics literally kept me sane. I think that kept my wits about me, and I was able to read. My parents wouldn't allow me to buy superhero books back initially because they decided they were too violent. But there were those Carl Barks Duck Adventures books that I picked up, a lot of Disney comics, a lot of Archie, Sugar and Spike, that kind of stuff, until everything except for superheroes I was reading. Just a voracious comic reader. Take stacks of comics up to into the treehouse we had in our backwoods, and I remember sitting there for hours reading all sorts of different things. And then I ran across Strange Adventures and the science fiction stories, and then the horror stories, the Boris Karloff monster books from Gold Key and Twilight Zone. My parents finally let me have superhero comics when they my mom saw a copy of Twilight Zone and opened it up to a guy making a deal with the devil. So she decided that she'd rather have me reading those violent superhero books than reading about people in talking to Satan. So if I burned the Twilight Zone digest that I just bought, she said she'd let me buy superheroes. So I went on the fire, and I ended up picking up superhero comics from there on. Excuse me, just for a second. Keep talking, Mitch.
Well, it's a good thing that there's never been any superheroes that made a deal with the devil.
It was Ghost Rider, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of talking about.
Oh, that came later. That came later because once I was able to buy comics, of course, that was right at the period when the Marvel Supernatural books started springing up. So you had Ghost Rider and Son of Satan and all these characters running. And back then, it wasn't Hellstorm. They weren't afraid to put Satan, really big words on the cover, Son of Satan, on that cover. That was a great title. I don't ever remember my parents seeing a copy. I know I read them when they were out. I probably kept them hidden or something. I never had a problem with comics with them after that, except that I was reading them too much. So
nowadays you can't get kids to even read anything.
Oh, well, nowadays you almost don't want the kids to read anything except for the old stuff.
True.
So a lot of the modern stuff and that's another thing I wanted to address with the power of comics. The modern people, the people that are up there doing the current comics, have a whole different perception of what comics are supposed to be, and it's wrong. It's just totally wrong. We're the ones. It's in our hands now. I think the brands are dead. The companies have backed themselves into such a big hole, and they've done so many bad imitations of these brands that used to mean a lot, like what Pat was talking about with Superman. Was such a big character, such an important character, and now he's killed off, and his son, his clone, is running around, or who knows what's going on. And the brand has become so tainted. Batman's the same way. There's 15 Robins out running around. There's 2 Huntresses running around now. It's just it's so watered down and such a convoluted mess. It was getting bad back in the 80s and 90s. That was back when they actually cared about continuity. And now continuity is out the window. They don't care. They just do whatever story they want to do. And most of the time it involves the characters sitting around having a milkshake or eating pizza.
And talking about their feelings.
And talking about their feelings and everybody else's feelings and what's socially correct. And it's not the same as the stories that we used to have. And I honestly believe that sometimes it really comes across as intentional, that they've dumbed these comics down on purpose. And then they sit back. Everybody in the business is wondering why manga has got the numbers that it's got. And I just posted a post on Facebook when I was at my local Barnes and Noble. They had 4 racks of graphic novels, of comic graphic novels. Most of them were Marvel and DC books. A little bit of the recognizable side properties. Last Ronin had some copies there, and so you saw some Vertigo stuff. Sandman was up there. They had a copy of Grendel Omnibus that I almost bought, but the corner was just destroyed on it. And yet, on the other hand, 6 rows of manga books, all sitting up there, all nice and neat in a row. And all of the Marvel books were all scattered around, different sizes, different formats. All the manga books were shiny and bright and they were all the same size, and they were all in rows. And you could go in there and pick up, hello, Facebook user. We don't know who you are, but thank you for listening out there. Hello and hi. If there are 2 different Facebook users, we have no idea, but we're glad you're there. Anyway, and then that somebody else on the Facebook line pointed out, well, and I said all of the classic Marvel reprints weren't there. It just wasn't there. The classic Marvel reprints that were there were a couple of licensed hardback books from Penguin. And they had the Captain America book. They had the Spider-Man book. But the best one, Penguin has done a number of different reprint books. The best one that they've done, in my opinion, it's a Black Panther book, because it reprints the classic old Black Panther stories from Don McGregor and Billy Graham. And it's just beautifully, well done story. It's the inspiration literally for the Black Panther movie. That book was nowhere to be seen. But the Captain America book and the Spider-Man book were there. And then I had somebody else write me in Facebook and tell me that Marvel's got a small section over in the YA kids section. If you go over into the kids section, and then the kid books and the YA books are sequestered off to a side wall. And the mangas and graphic novels are all together in all of their tchotchkes. There wasn't a whole lot of Marvel and DC merchandise there, but Studio Ghibli had a beautiful display. Little Totoro dolls and kits for Kiki's delivery service and that kind of stuff. Nice. No. And there were a lot of people in the store. There were a lot of people looking at the manga shelves, and all of the graphic novels were destroyed. I mean, just mangled and, well, not destroyed, but they're barely recognizable.
Now, Now you said that they had Marvel stuff in the YA books. Were they YA books that were Marvel, or were they like actual comic book collections?
Some of them were, but they did have some graphic novels that were Miles Morales, Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, that kind of thing. But intermixed in the midst of all of that, pardon me, again, just coming off of a cold, there was some another line of Marvel Masterworks that they've gone back and reprinted. And those are in color, 10 issues in a chunk, or 12 issues, depending upon the continuity, because they want to make sure you get the whole story in a book. But the books themselves were smaller size, not quite this size, maybe a little bit bigger, where an average comic book would be like that size. It was about an inch shorter and a half an inch thinner than your regular graphic novel book. But it was the Masterwork reprinted. It just big enough to be read. Thank goodness. I mean, I could open it up and read it. My eyes aren't the best, but definitely aimed at a younger audience. It's like as if Marvel was trying to shrink down to an anime size, and they're like, well, it can't go quite that small. And they were about halfway in between, a regular graphic novel or comic book size as we know it, and the little dinkier anime size. But they had the staples there. They had Hulk and Thor and Spider-Man, this a second volume of Fantastic Four, which was kind of thick because it had the first annual in it as well. But that was nice to see. It's just that I think it was misplaced. They should be there, absolutely, because they were intermixed with the Scholastic books. And I've talked about the Scholastic books before. Pardon me. And again, we're talking the power of comics in that Dog Man, Captain Underpants, Cool Cat Comic Club, the Raina Telgemeier books, I think have done so much more for at least here in the States. I don't know how it is up there with you, Pat, but I think the Scholastic books have done more to attract kids to reading comics than what Marvel and DC has bothered to do in the last decade and a half or 2 decades, especially with their books being one of 6 or the floppy books that you would find at a retail shop. I used to retail. I have a decade's worth of retail experience under my belt. I met my wife while I was retailing. And I honestly don't know how retailers stay in business now. I really don't, because the product, in my opinion, is so substandard. And it's got to be a rough sell. I mean, if a retailer isn't offering Funko Pops and every volume of D&D and has a case of Magic cards, I don't know how they're surviving. And it's really or a full variety of manga books for sale. And it's purely Marvel and DC's fault for not stepping up their game, in my opinion.
Do you think a lot of Marvel and DC not stepping up their game has to do with trying to push out of that only for kids stereotype?
Hang on just a second.
Oh.
I think that's a good question. I think that they're kind of like catering to like a specific set of people, to be honest. Like I guess I don't want to be too PC or too political, but I remember, I don't know if you guys remember the 2 characters that Marvel debuted called I think it was Snowflake and Safe Space. So it's just it's kind of
Yeah, that was part of a New Warriors book that they decided not to come out with after all. They canceled that book. As far as I know, they've never released it. They had B Positive on there and a couple of other characters as well. Trailblazer.
Yeah.
Now, as someone who's part Native American, I find that offensive. Calling a Native American character Trailblazer. But that's just me. That's just my opinion.
Which you have a right to. But it's just a genuine. I think what the problem is the larger the execs in the corporation really don't care, as long as those brands are able to be pushed out as underoos or merchandising T-shirts or whatever, and they're still going to sell a certain amount of them. They don't care what the publishing end of it does. So the publishing end of it makes so little money compared to the movie end of it, and they're seeing now, I think, especially Marvel is reaping the bad quality of the modern books because they're farming more of the modern properties out there as opposed to the old classic staples. Everybody now, when you talk to everybody, at least a lot of the folks my age, to them, Marvel literally ended at Endgame, and that the stuff that they're doing now is kind of entertaining, but it's not Marvel. It's not what Marvel used to be. It's not what Marvel represents in their mind and their hearts. And yet they'll still tell you, I sat down and I watched Civil War for the 10th or 15th time, and it was amazing. I stumbled across a video of the fight scene in the airport. Again, I haven't watched it in quite a few years. And I'm sitting there looking at it going, that's really a lot of fun. That's really cool. Great stuff. And you look at the stuff they're doing now and it's like, wow, I sat through Eternals, And Shang-Chi was a nice movie, but it wasn't like the old Marvel movies like they had done in the past.
Well, that's because when you had the Marvel movies start, a lot of the people that were working on them either were really like very talented people, like Kenneth Branagh did Thor, and so forth. But then you had Edward Norton is a huge fan of the Incredible Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
And Jon Favreau is kind of a geek, so he knew at least knew who Iron Man was. I'm not sure if he was a fan of him or not, but
I can almost guarantee you between Marvel and Star Wars, that was his childhood. It wouldn't.
Yeah, Star Wars definitely. I can agree.
He was Foggy Nelson in the Ben Affleck movie.
He was. I keep forgetting that movie.
So does everybody else.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
And also, that's when Marvel was.
Ben Affleck would prefer you forget that movie as well. So, just like George Clooney would rather you forget Batman and Robin. Whatever.
A lot of people would rather forget Batman and Robin. Yeah. I'm one of them.
They say he keeps a picture of himself in the Batman suit in his office just to remind him to try not to make those same stupid mistakes again. But what the point is that those comics are powerful. There's people growing up now watching those movies, especially the before pre-Endgame movies, that are going to be influenced by that stuff. And now Marvel has made it a big point to say that they go out and they look for people who haven't read the books in order to work on the properties, because they don't want anybody worried about canon. They want, or the actual feel of the character, not realizing, of course, that's what sold those movies in the first place.
Yeah.
There's no doubt Robert Downey Jr. was Tony Stark, and that he literally carried those Iron Man films, even though number 2 was a little shaky. The same thing with Helmsworth and Thor. All of these people would do research. They knew who those characters were before they went in front of the cameras. And now Marvel almost boasts that they go out of their way to keep people from reading any of the books before they work on the properties, because they don't, even She-Hulk, the writing room in She-Hulk, there was nobody there versed in law or court procedure. They had to fake it as they went along. And they made a big deal, almost boasting about that fact, which is really a shame, because they definitely should have had somebody up there who was familiar with the occupation of the main character.
Usually they do. They're called consultants. I don't know why they didn't have one on She-Hulk.
No idea. They didn't have
every movie that has a niche concept, like if it's a police movie, an army movie, medical movie, there's always someone either in the writing room or on production that is a consultant that knows about that field to kind of get all the problems ironed out, and there wasn't there for She-Hulk.
And again, they're not using that respect. They're not giving comics the respect that it deserves. They feel they're just working on funny books, so they can do whatever they want and put whatever message that they feel is necessary to put in to please themselves, as opposed to actually doing an entertaining product.
I feel what's going to happen is that Marvel's going to, I don't know, just have a huge dip in quality, and then history will repeat itself, and then they'll gain that trust back. So Marvel in the 90s, they went bankrupt, and then they had to sell, Spider-Man to Sony, and then Fantastic Four and X-Men to Fox. Mm-hmm. And then for, they were bankrupt. The comics weren't really selling. They weren't doing that great. And then, the movies were rising, and then they proved themselves again. They showed their passion and everything like that. And then, they got too cocky, and then,
those were deals that were done before they realized the monetary value of those brands. That's why the true monetary value of those, they know it now, but that's I think one of the reasons why Disney came in and bought Fox, was to reclaim the rights for the X-Men, which they still haven't used in the MCU. There's a big rumor going around now that the next 2 Avengers movies will end with a reboot. and that they'll
Oh, I didn't know that.
reconstruct the Marvel universe with the FF and the X-Men in it intact. But who knows? With the rate that they have been going, it's very easy for them to muff it up. So
Yeah, and a rumor is just a rumor until
rumors,
there's evidence.
so true, just a rumor.
Yeah, because I don't know how many times I've heard Kathleen Kennedy's going to be fired. It's like the 20th time you're like, yeah.
Talking about not respecting properties, and this is off of our the Power of Comics theme, but you've seen or heard the rumors about what happens in Indy 5, haven't you?
Indiana Jones dies and what's her name takes over.
He doesn't just die; they erase him from history.
Oh,
and the lead female takes his hat and his whip, and then the last some of the screenings say the last scenes of the movie is that character, her, going through all of the Indiana Jones key scenes from the other movies, showing that she not only takes over, she takes over of all of his adventures, and he's erased from time. The Dial
I'll
of
never
Destiny.
forgive George Lucas for selling
The
Lucas
Dial of
Silver.
Destiny is actually a time machine, apparently, and they end up going back in time and meeting a young Indy. Young Indy dies. Old Indy tosses the girl his hat and whip and tells her to carry on, and she becomes Indiana Jones through all of the Indiana Jones movies. Yeah. Anyway, sets her
Even
up
the
for a
one with his
TV show.
dad.
I wish I didn't hear that.
All of them. Yeah. That's the rumor. Anyway, that's not the power of comics, though. Power of comics is there to inspire, it's to entertain, and have for decades, multiple decades. Now it's up to us. It's up to us out there to make those comics, to inspire those readers, to entertain those people, because nobody else is going to do it. Corporations don't care anymore. The secondary publishers are too busy trying to find the Netflix deal of their dreams, which is not even a viable choice anymore, as all of these streaming services budgets become tighter and tighter. It's up to the people doing crowdfunding. It's up to the independent and the alternative creators. We are the real Imagineers now that get to look after this art form. I think it's the larger corporations have just abandoned the idea of sequential art, of doing comics. They don't want to do comics. They'd rather do movies. They'd rather sell underoos. They don't care if their comics make any money or not. And they don't care who's working on these comics. And there's a lot of people up there that shouldn't be working on these comics. All you got to do is try to pick one up and read it anymore. And you'll see that. Watch the videos and the outcry from the people. They don't care. They're out doing what they want to do. They're telling the message that they want to tell, even though they don't have the talent to portray it correctly. They're out there literally killing off these brands. And some of it, I think, is very intentional because they want to try to get rid of some of the toxic masculinity that has been plaguing comics, especially superhero comics, for years. That's why you're seeing so many ridiculous superhero stories out there now that aren't heroic. And you've got sites like the Fourth Age out there and Critical Thinking that are out there, or Thinking Critical, out there doing reviews on these books going, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're just killing this market. You're killing this market. You're killing this industry. You're killing this art form. And I think it's up to us to maintain it. It's up to us to grow the audience for it. And it's something that we need to do. We need to look at, I think we need to take it a little bit more seriously because it's literally in our hands. Marvel and DC ain't going to do it. These other publishers out there aren't interested in doing an entertaining product as well. They're out. They want to use an IP, and they also have people up there doing their own messaging. That's why you've got Transformers and G.I. Joe in the state that it's in. Well, at least for the next couple of weeks until IDW loses it or Hasbro takes it back. That's why the Howard estate's taking back Conan, because he's not Conan and the Barbarian characters like that literally carried comics for decades. Those single characters trying to go out there and beat the odds, your Talons, your Claws, your Killravens, your Conans, Culls, Solomon Kane, You've got all of these great characters from heroic pulp fiction out there literally being wasted. Shadows, another one. Doc Savage is another one. All of these characters are being lost to time because people don't want to carry on their message or show how great and how entertaining these characters are supposed to be. You know, they'd much rather talk about their social relevance and how much they need to be respecting everybody instead of telling a straightforward adventure story that entertains people and makes them want to come back for more.
Yeah, I just feel as if we're in this state right now where we're just people just don't have to like earn anybody's like trust. That's what the people who own these big IPs think to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They say to themselves, "Oh, they're already established characters. They've been around for like decades. Like, they don't have to do too much, you know."
So I want to pull up a fantastic quote here from Jack Kirby, the great Jack Kirby. I believe this is the one. Superman's going to live forever. They'll be reading Superman in the next century when you and I are gone. I felt in that respect, I was doing the same thing. I wanted to be known. I wasn't going to sell a comic that was going to die quickly. That's Kirby's theory. Was Kirby's theory on it while he was alive. And that's comics right there. You know, you were talking about Superman being such a great character, a saving character, a Boy Scout. There was a time back, if you go back and you read the first Action comics, the first Superman comics, he was truly a social justice warrior.
He was a man of the people.
He was a man of the people, and a lot of his stories were very people-based. He was out in the lumber, fighting with the lumberjacks or helping them cut down trees. Or one of the big stories in the first Action, I think, one of the early Actions, he bumps into Washington, grabs the senator, and hangs him out the door, out the window by his heel. And he goes, "You're going to do the will of the people from now on, right? Or am I going to drop you? It's your choice." You know, there's a great Superman cover. I think it's Action 3 or 4, where he's got the it's almost a copy of the Amazing Fantasy 15 cover with Spider-Man, only he's got a senator under his arm and he's jumping from building to building. You know, he's got a politician. These crazy politicians, even back then, weren't doing the will of the people.
Well, that problem's been going back to ancient Rome and Greece.
Well, you go, yeah, that's very true. Take a look at the hassles that Abraham Lincoln had, you know, having to deal with all of the people in his cabinet. Just, it's eternal, but that's politics in general. That's the downfall of the Roman Empire right there. If you want to get into history, all sorts of stuff. I'm going to run one more quote, and then we're hitting the top of the hour, and then after that, we'll run some bumps, and then we'll start talking about echoes, right? Echoes of the triumphant. We'll get to that, but first, I want to show you the power of comics, just a little bit of the power of comics. I ran across this on a video not too long ago, and I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. That is comics right there. That is comics." So here we go. It's somebody in the news. Everybody knows. And I'm not playing this to be political. I'm playing this to make a point. Folks, this is the power of comics. Here we go.
I think that's really a good thing about the United States. My grandfather was actually American from Minnesota. And my mom was born in Canada. So I do have some American background. In fact, a lot of people think like my name must be from some exotic location, but I was named after my great-grandfather, who was from Minneapolis, or actually St. Paul, I should say. And he was like a school superintendent and part-time sheriff in 1900. And I was named after him.
What took your family to South Africa?
My grandfather moved with all his kids and my mom and everyone to South Africa because he wanted to use it as a base of exploration. So he had this little plane that he liked to fly all over the place, and he flew it all through Africa and Asia. But he was sort of an amateur archaeologist. He liked to explore things.
Just for exploration, just a quest for curiosity. Seems to run in the family.
Yeah, I guess so. it seemed like the vast majority of such things came from the United States. I also like read a lot of comic books, and they all seem to be set in the United States. So it's like, well, this is a good place. This is where I got to go to this place.
Got to go to this place, this United States, where all these comics happen at. That's the power of comics, folks.
Mm-hmm.
There we are. You want to talk about people who are influencing people who are, it's that inspiration, it's that entertainment value, it's that spark of imagination to get things rolling. That's what comics are all about. That's what pulp magazines were all about. Science fiction's all about. The movies were all about. There's Spielberg's got a great film out now about his youth. I'm pretty sure it's autobiographical. I'm not even sure if that's out yet, but about his experiences as a youth in comics and doing film and deciding on filmmaking. And again, you'd be amazed the comic fans out there that are working in the arts or working in entertainment that were inspired by comics because they were that powerful. They were that imaginative. And we need to get back to that again. We need to do more of that. And I honestly think it's up to us. I do. I don't think the big corporations are going to care unless there's a hardcore amount of money involved. And I don't think they're doing anything to try to inspire a new audience. That's why manga is as strong as it is. Because manga's got the imagination. They've got the ingenuity rolling. And it's a shame because they picked up sequential art from us. I mean, it was a natural evolution for them because their language in Kenjei is pictographs, literally. So blending words and pictures together was just a natural for the Asian countries. But that art form, the true meaning of blending of comics and pictures or words and pictures really comes from us. Starts with the political cartoon, starts with the editorial cartoon, goes into the comic strip, turns into the adventure strip, turns into the comic book. And that's also part of the reason why comics were so downtrodden, because if you couldn't get a job in the newspapers doing editorial cartoons, you got a job in the newspapers doing advertising illustrations. You couldn't get that. You aimed to try to get a comic strip. If you got a comic strip back in the 30s and 40s, you were set. I mean, and those people, the people that were doing those comics, you can go back and look at some of the old newsreels and that they treated those people like superstars. Chester Gould, Hal Foster, Alex Raymond, Milton Caniff
Windsor McKay
were treated as superstars. They were celebrities, and that was the feel that should have always been maintained until they were beaten down as kiddie literature, picked on for juvenile delinquency, which was wrong. Wortham's book, which was a joke, and he later admitted that he did it just to grandstand and as a joke. But that stigma of comics being kiddie literature, it's followed us even to this day. And now it's been so eroded and so walked on, so abused by so many people who are trying to bleed this industry out of money, that it's up to the Imagineers, it's up to us. We're the last wizards. We're the end of the line for this. The comic reading audience is getting older, has gotten older, and now it's down to almost a niche market where we're doing crowdfunding and we're hitting the customer, the reader directly, as opposed to going through a distributor or going through a retail shop. And it'll be a interesting mutation in the future to see how the retailers get by. And just because the big corporations that they've been relying on for the last 35, 40 years to provide them product, the last 15 or so years has been very bad, very substandard product. A lot of self-insert characters that literally don't entertain as much as just preach from a horrible soapbox.
Well, it's not just that, but before that became a problem, I remember, that Marvel and DC, or at least the companies that owned them, just started caring only about the movies.
Yeah.
And the comics kind of became the
merchandising.
Yeah. It kind of became put on the back burner. And I think that was when a lot of this, self insert stuff started with Marvel and DC. Because if no one's watching the asylum, the inmates take over. For lack of a better metaphor
analogy. Yeah, that's too true. That is too true. And you're seeing Marvel pay for that now. Like I said, whatever they're on, phase 4,
They're starting phase 5.
They're scared to death on starting phase 5. Starting phase 5 because they know they've lost a lot of customers from phase 3. They've got to know. They've got to be able to see it in their dollar amounts that those days are long gone. I mean, you can still, and like I said before, you can still sit back and watch Captain America, First Avenger, or Civil War, or Infinity War, or Endgame, and still be entertained, and then sit there and watch Eternals and go, why am I watching this? You really have to question set. And there's some of Eternals that's good. All of these series have little flashes. I mean, Moon Knight could have been a great show. Should have been a great show. Was still an okay show. Ended better than it started to an extent. I mean, the very end, they finally started getting around to the concentrating on Moon Knight at the very last scene or two, but which is disgusting because he should have been all through that show. It was his show.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That show had the ideal actor. It was the ideal character. They could have done so much more with that character.
That's it. That character though. I will say this: it's like none of the Marvel Phase 4 projects are at 100% for me. But one of the things I do admire is that they're at the very least, they're still ambitious because Moon Knight's like a very, very hard character to do because he has dissociative identity disorder. Mm-hmm. So you have like multiple characters within one body. So that's a really hard thing to do as like a writer and a creator. So.
And it had its little bright spots. Actually, that it's those kind of challenges that have the possibility of making a property like that super entertaining. I mean, Moon Knight is an incredible character when you get into it, and there's so much they could do with it, and so much they decided not to do with it, or just gave you little small flashes of it as you went along. Like I said, I think at the very end was a true flash of what Moon Knight was capable of. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we could do this with the character. Boom. It's like, well, duh. Why weren't you doing that 6 episodes ago?
Moon Knight should have been on par with the first season of Daredevil.
Amen. Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Because I mean, I might be biased because I'm a fan of Daredevil, but the way they handled him in that first season was perfect.
My only complaint was that they didn't get him in the red costume fast enough.
I kind of understand why they did that because they were focusing mainly on his origin, but they could have introduced him in the red suit earlier.
Well, they were trying to keep all of those Netflix shows. They were trying to keep really urban. They were trying to stay away from doing the flashy costume as much as concentrate on the character itself. Yeah, that's why you got Jennifer Jones laughing at her outfit and Luke Cage dressed up in the old 70s Luke Cage outfit long enough to look at himself in the mirror and go, hell no. And, jump out to something different.
It had so much possibility.
Yeah.
Moon Knight, not Daredevil, because Daredevil was, the first 2 seasons were perfect in my opinion.
It's a great show. Punisher, phenomenal.
Yeah.
On
perfect
Netflix.
Punisher for that role.
Couldn't have picked better. Well, I think all of their casting, all of the MCU castings, right up to maybe Eternals, were phenomenal. And I think Tatiana Maslany is excellent. She's a phenomenal actress. I loved her in Orphan Black. It's just that the writing on She-Hulk was spotty at best. Even the ending, I was laughing at the ending. It was so absurd, but it was meant to be absurd. There's still little bits, like I said, like with Moon Knight, little bits of entertainment value sitting there, but it's not the shows that we used to get. It's not the same quality of stuff that we used to, and it's not even the effects. That's the problem, because everybody wants to complain that the budget on She-Hulk was horrible and that the effects sucked and all of this. they could do with the budget that they had. They just need to up the quality of the writer, and that's the big thing. The Werewolf by Night special they did is phenomenal, and that was done literally on a shoestring budget. You didn't like it, Mitch?
Oh, I loved it.
No, I was nodding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the if you've seen the Guardians holiday special,
I still need to.
it's great. It's great.
saw
Brain
the-
check material. Don't think about it a whole lot. There's a little bit of continuity in it, not much, and it's fine. It's great stuff. Gunn, I can't wait to see what James Gunn does over at DC, because if he takes the Guardian sensibility, maybe not so much the Peacemaker absurdity, but if he takes the Guardian sensibility over to the DC universe, treats some of that as dramatic and some of it as absurdness, because what are you going to do with a guy dressed up like Peacemaker? You know, you can't take that character seriously. That I thought that was genius what they ended up doing with that. And I like Peacemaker as a Charlton character. I really do. But I really enjoyed that. What I saw of that show, I only saw like the first 3 episodes of the HBO series. I need to go back and take a look at it. I didn't like what they did to Judo Master very much, but or Vigilante was kind of goofy in parts. But what they did with Peacemaker, it's like, what else are you going to be able to do? You know?
I saw the opening to the Guardians Christmas special. Some people were reviewing it on another show I was watching, and that thing is just that one opening was fucking hilarious.
With the 97s, I think the guy singing.
Yeah, again at the end when they're all done, he goes, "And how did you get those instruments?"
Yeah. See, it's really good, but again, Gunn's watching over that. So
yeah,
you got a quality talent watching over a property that they know and respect. Not too crazy about the way Adam Warlock looks, though. But we'll see how that goes.
He's wearing too much bronzer.
Yeah. It's always a problem when you first see these characters and you're not really seeing them move 100%. That you go, I don't know how that's going to go. You know, when the Guardians first, the trailers for the first Guardians started coming out, the wife really hated it. And I said, no, you don't understand. Says they're going to have a talking tree and they're going to have a talking raccoon. They're going to make a ton of money. This is going to be awesome. And she's like, oh, it looks stupid. It's like, no, it'll be great. It's going to be great.
It was Rocket Raccoon and Groot were both, these characters that Marvel didn't really do anything with. Cause I mean, Groot was a leftover from the Marvel Monster days.
Same thing with all the rest of the Guardians as well.
Yeah.
They were all just secondary characters that I think it was Bendis, first threw that team together.
Yeah. Yeah. It was Bendis, I believe.
Yeah.
And just
back when he was actually doing good things.
Yeah.
Anyway, editorial comment brought to you by me. Anyway. All right, let's run a bump or two, and then we'll start talking about Echoes of the Triumphant. All right, Pat. Let's talk about a couple other projects here. Oh, maybe I should run our disclaimer too, which I probably should have run at the start. Here we go.
The views and opinions expressed within the video content found on the Indie Comics Network are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Indie Comics Network or its sponsors. Have a question or comment for us to address on the show? Have a topic you want us to talk about? Email us at indiecomicsnetwork@gmail.com.
It is difficult to write these words, but I must for my own sake. I have done, seen, and been part of many things in my life.
When your timeline reaches its Armageddon, what's a kid to do?
I'm not a...
Snag the keys to your mom's experimental ship, of course.
That's not quite how it happened.
Drift aimlessly in the rift between dimensions, trying to figure out how to operate it.
Now hold on a sec.
Pick up a few hitchhikers.
Hi!
Hello.
And maybe solve a disturbing mystery that could lead to the destruction of reality itself.
You know, if there's time... There's always time.
I'm not so sure about that.
Get in on the adventure with the Rift Riders on Indiegogo. And if you go over to the Rift Riders over on Indiegogo right now, it's still in demand. Still in demand for the time being. There's a great Arrow Comics tier over there where you can pick up 8 #1 Arrow Comics for $50. So go over there and take a look at it. That's Rift Riders over on Indiegogo. Calico 1, Paragon 1, Hybrids 1, Sin Killer 1 from Marv, HeroBot 01, Revolt #1 are all available over there, as well as Rift Riders #1. You really enjoy it. It's a wide variety of genres, wide variety of talent, some great talent up there involved in those books. So go over there and check it out. Now, let's take a look at Echoes of the Triumphant, numbers 0 through 3. Tell us about it, Pat.
All right, awesome. So, Echoes of the Triumphant is basically a series where there are superhumans, but there's no Cape Crusaders. There's no people out there looking to be vigilantes and go about justice and all that sort of stuff. Basically what happened is that there was this chemical plant explosion. People got powers and all that sort of stuff, but the government just had to figure out how to deal with people. And so what they did was that they passed this new law saying, okay, we're just going to make all these superhumans do this, physical labor and all that sort of stuff, so that we'll keep them in line, and we'll keep them busy, and we'll keep them all sorted out and all that stuff. So there's a lot of government intervention, and there's groups of people that are really opposed to this. They're really opposed to this sort of politics, and there's a rebel gang of superhumans that are really just trying to make their own sense of order in society. And so there's a lot of tension going on, and so the main character, Adrian Avery, is just there in the middle of it all, and he's just trying to keep the peace.
Okay. I've seen a werewolf.
Yeah, so that's the leader of the rebel gang of superhumans.
There we go. A little bit of manga influence working there?
Just a little bit, yeah. I actually wasn't expecting kind of my artist's manga style, but I like it a lot. It's I don't know, it's much appreciated. It's really, I welcome it. So it's not too manga, but it's just enough. So because basically I had a vision for it to be as gritty and grounded as possible. So I feel like that just that little bit of touch of manga is perfect. It's it has that gritty and grounded feel to it. Yet it's a story about superhumans and stuff like that. So there's a lot of larger than life elements to the series, and yeah, I feel like he's walking the line pretty perfectly.
Cool. Awesome to hear. And you have rewards.
Yeah, so we have you can get a digital copy of the 3rd issue, and you can get the print copy, of course. Most of the rewards just involved getting digital and print bundles. Is it okay if I can swear on the show?
It's what?
Is it okay if I swear on the show?
Oh, yeah. We ran a disclaimer. We're Chivi MA DLSV. So
for sure. So there's a tweaked as fuck sort of pledge, and basically the pledge is if you back that one, you get to be featured as whatever type of superhuman character that you want to be featured as in issue number 4. So
There we are. Right
A bunch of people backed that one in the last campaign, so I thought it'd be cool to have it on this campaign again. So
sweet.
Yeah.
And how far along is issue 3?
We have, so the line art is finished. The sketches, line art is finished. The base coloring is finished. We're just touching up the coloring process right now.
Gotcha.
So we anticipate to do the lettering process in the next month. The cover is finished. So we should have everything wrapped up by February.
Excellent. Well along. And 1 and 2 obviously are done.
Yep.
Sweet. That's Echoes of the Triumphant right now over on Kickstarter. You just kicked this off right before you come on the air.
Exactly. Yeah. Just at 10 o'clock.
6 backers. Alrighty. So jump in there on that. Take a look at it. Echoes of the Triumphant, numbers 0 through 3. The much anticipated sequel to Echoes of the Triumphant is finally here. Can I run the video?
Yeah, of course.
Is there copyright free music on it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Gotta ask. Gotta be sure. That's too many times lately we've been getting flagged for just the silliest stuff. So here we go. Can you hear it?
Yep.
You can hear it all right?
I can.
You can?
Mm-hmm.
All right, good. If you can hear it. Everybody else should be able to hear it. We're looking at it? Good. There we are.
I think the girls with their nails done girls with their nails done. I think the girls with their nails done. Girls with their nails done.
Only one way to find out. Get in on that campaign now. Echoes of the Triumphant, 0 through 3, over on Kickstarter.
Looks cool.
Looks great. Anything more you want to tell us about it, Pat?
It's just a really awesome series. It's just, if you love sci-fi, if you love thrillers, if you love grounded stories, I definitely recommend that people check it out. And it's basically, if you're a fan of projects like similar to like Breaking Bad, for instance, like I think you'd love it because it's a character where he's very much driven by his like pride at the beginning of the story. So his character flaw really just drives the narrative, and that's what makes it a really, really cool read.
Cool. Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Go over there and check that out, folks. Echoes of
I also
the
like how you have a
0 through 3.
A flash drive in it. Kind of reminds me of like the cartoons and movies back in the day where they have a floppy disk that was the secret to saving the world. Of course, they don't have these anymore, so they have to use flash drive.
Exactly. Right. Oh, I keep switching. Let me get back to StreamYard here. There we go. All right.
Okie dokie. That pregnant pause brought to you by ZimmCast.
ZimmCast for the 7th of December, 2022. Hope you.
It's the 7th?
It is
I've been
7th of
riding the
December.
8th on everything. Whoops.
Well, you're a day ahead of yourself.
Must be doing something good.
We plan on going and making the rounds on Friday, the 9th, because a year ago on the 9th, I was moved from the hospital to the nursing home. I was an ambulance ride I'll never forget. So there we go. Couldn't even touch the top of my head. But anyway, it's 8 weeks on the respirator, or not 8 weeks, about 6 weeks on the respirator, and a few months getting back to normal after being on it. So, good times. It's a great year. Looking forward to 2023. I'm telling you, Arrow Comics has got a lot of things planned. We got a lot of stuff going on. Just saw a couple colored pages today, but I mentioned and was boasting about that earlier. Right now, if you go over to arrowcomics.store, arrowcomics.store, Arrow Comics is available over there for you to purchase, as well as that great Arrow Comics tier over on the Rift Riders campaign. There's a great collection of hybrids available over at the store. Calico 1, Paragon 1, HeroBot 02 will be out of the printer here, hopefully next week. And looking forward to having that in my hands. Just talked to some of the talent that was in that book today. And looking around for my books, and I'm not finding them. Honey, like that. You got bug poops all over the place. Piles of books, Pat. Piles of books.
So do I. I have boxes over here, a bookshelf.
Boxes over here, boxes over there.
I have Christmas movies over here for some reason. Don't know how.
It's terrible. I've got my copy of Octopus Cowboy more readily available than my comics. Here we are. There's the Revolt book that's available. Calico 1. That's available. Looking forward to having these out there and having folks read them. Got a lot of nice reaction from Calico, nice reaction from Paragon. A lot of fun, folks who just want to have you read them. Hope you enjoy them. So, arrowcomics.store. Pat, tell folks how they can find you outside of the Kickstarter campaign.
The best way to find me is reaching out to me via Facebook Messenger. We have a Facebook page called Reverb Comics, and the other best place to...
Called what now?
Reverb Comics.
You might want to. You might want to spell that. Reverb. R-E-A-V-E-R.
R-E-V-E-R-B. Reverb.
Oh, yeah. like electronic audio. Reverb.
Exactly. Yeah.
V-E-R-B.
No, I spoke too fast. Yeah.
Yep.
And
that's why I was asking. Yep.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
And then we got an Instagram page under the same name, Reverb Comics. So, yeah, those are the best places to reach me.
And you're planning on having this out fulfilled February. What's after that? You got plans for 2023?
Yeah, we're gonna finish this issue up in February, and we're gonna ship everything out in March. And at the latest, everybody should expect to receive their print rewards in March, or sorry, yeah, in April. Mm-hmm. We worked on a couple pages for issue number 4. So the first arc really finishes on that issue. So once everything's done with number 4, we'll just finesse the story from number 1 to number 4 and just make it as kick-ass as possible.
There you go. Mitch, tell folks how they can find you.
You can find me right here at Linktree/Celtic Cross Studios. You can find my website, online store, where you can pick up my newest collection of Boger Comics Southern Gothic, if you want to pick up a creepy Christmas present, and all my socials at the same place.
Cool. All right.
And you can also find me Tuesday on Dispatches from Outside the Box. I think we're doing live action Disney.
8 p.m.
today.
And
right here on the Indie Comics Network.
Right here on the 8 p.m. on Tuesdays. Right here on the Indie Comics Network. You're going to have to make sure you mention Scarecrow of Romney Marsh, as well as The Adventures of Bullwhip Griffin.
Okay.
Right over your head. Saw that expression.
Never even heard of them.
Who? What? Bullwhip Griffin. Never. Anyway.
No.
Disney Plus.
I know Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Darby O'Gill and the Little People. There you go. Sean Connery at his best.
Yeah, my Celtic background kind of.
Oh, they don't have Scarecrow of Romney Marsh up on Disney Plus. I hope they do one of these days. It was part of the Wonderful World of Disney. It is actually based on one of the first pulp superhero vigilante characters named Dr. Sin, S-Y-N.
The Reverend Dr. Sin.
The Reverend Dr. Sin.
I know him. Yeah.
Well, Disney did a movie that they cut up into a couple of episodes of Wonderful World of Disney way back when. Had a big effect on my youth. I remember it being very spooky. The guy who would dress up like a scarecrow on horseback and go riding around. It was actually a Gold Key comic adaptation out of it.
I didn't know Disney did Dr. Sin.
The Scarecrow of Romney Marsh. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. For the time, as a kid, it was real spooky. Bullwhip Griffin I saw as part of a double feature at the theater. That's Roddy McDowell, and it's a goofy Western about a guy who likes to whip a whip around. Haven't seen it in a long time. I watched the opening credits, and I'm like, I don't remember this at all. Yeah.
Roddy McDowell is one of those people that'll make a movie enjoyable, no matter what the quality of the movie it is.
Yep. It's like Don Knotts. Anything he's in, you just have to sit and watch it because it's Roddy McDowell. So why not? Yeah, but that's been up on
a horrible movie
Disney
called
Plus
Laser Blast. That was
what?
Perfect.
It's not a horrible movie. What are you talking about? That's a pre-Star Wars science fiction film where they tried to do their best with practical stop motion effects.
What, the turtles without their shells?
What? No, that's the Laser Blast. Was the kid who had the futuristic weapon?
Yeah,
right?
the aliens
attached to his arm.
That's a Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Alien came out, looked like a sock. It was a claymation work.
Yeah,
right there on the same level as Basket Case. Come on.
I do love Basket Case.
Everybody who sees it loves Basket Case, even with the bad effects. It's great. It's one of the few Betamax movies I remember. We had with my first wife, we had a Beta machine. I used to hit Super City on the way home and rent three horror movies just about every night or every other night. We'd go home and we'd watch them. So I got burned out on the entire genre for many years off of bad B movie horror films. Except Basket Case, which was great. That was back during the who was that? Midnight. Was it Midnight? Guys who did Doll Man and Trancers. And
that's Full Moon.
Full Moon. Miss those guys.
Yeah. It was directed by, I think, Frank Heinenlotter, who also did Frankenhooker.
There you go.
Which is another movie that is awesome.
Very memorable. Yep. It's like toxic, like the old trauma movies. Yeah. Great stuff. And you're talking live action Disney, so not a whole lot of horror there. Escape from Witch Mountain, maybe. Something wicked. Something wicked. This Way Comes.
That is Disney.
It is.
Oh, okay. I never was a Disney fan growing up,
which actually holds up better than you remember. It's really a decent film. Something Wicked. Disney's done so many great movies with such terrible marketing that they ought to be ashamed of themselves. They kind of have to leave it to the professionals, I think, to really push it. John Carter, phenomenal movie, horrible marketing. Sorcerer's Apprentice, watchable movie, horrible marketing. Tomorrowland by Chris Bird, great movie, horrible marketing. And you sit there and you go, how come this didn't get more traction? Well, anyway, I don't think Disney really knows how to market their movies very much. The people working at Marvel that did their marketing up at least through Endgame knew what they were doing. Did a lot of really great stuff. All of the trailers were really good and all of that, but wish they'd have done that for John Carter because that movie deserved a lot more traction than what it did.
It was good.
Very tight movie. Yep. But then a lot of the pulp characters now, that's what's kind of stalled them on doing a lot of the pulp movies. Because, Rock is Doc Savage. There's just no question about it. Then they tried a Tarzan movie where Margot Robbie was Jane. And that was fun, and it was good. It was about as close to Tarzan from the books as you're ever going to see on screen, which is a shame because the Johnny Weissmuller stuff and Tarzan's like Wizard of Oz. It's had so many tropes come out of the bad adaptions of the movie. Everybody thinks Wizard of Oz. They think about him dancing down the yellow brick road and doing musical numbers and that kind of thing. That's not Oz. Same thing with Tarzan. It's not. If you go back and you actually read the books, have you ever read the books?
Long time ago.
You need to go back. That nothing as a kid, nothing was greater to me than sitting there reading and it's back to the power of comics again. Reading the Joe Kubert adaptation of Tarzan, the Tarzan of the Apes that DC printed, and have him stick to the ending of the original book where Tarzan literally turns to those people and go, "Oh, you people are nuts. I'm not Lord Greystoke. Get the fuck off of my land. Get the hell off of my port." And he went and swung back into the jungle. That's the end of the first book. And you go, oh wait a minute. What do you it's a great, great ending because I doubt that Burroughs knew that he was going to do more Tarzan books when he wrote the first one, but he left it in especially the soap opera aspects of it, left it wide open enough for people to beg for more. It's just a well-crafted, a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for.
Well, it's kind of what happened with Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock.
Yeah.
Was, he just got so tired of writing it that he killed the character off.
And people loved it.
He got hate mail.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, he's coming back.
Its bomb was like that with the first Oz book. He wrote the book, just wanted to get it out there, get it off his chest. He was a bunch of stories that he told his kids, and there it was done. Now on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And wait a minute, why do I keep getting mail about Oz? Until his publicist said, "You should sit and write another Oz book, dude. Your other books that you write were fun and they were fantasy oriented, but they weren't Oz. People want Oz, give them Oz." So, yeah. Great stuff. All right, folks, I've been your host, Randy Zimmerman. You've been watching the ZimmCast. We appreciate you out there. Even if you're not watching us live, the chat was incredibly silent or quiet today. I really was hoping it would pick up a bit, but we appreciate everybody out there listening. I know there's a lot of competition on Wednesday nights, so we'll see what happens with this show in the future. And just deeply appreciate you listening. Make sure you tune in Friday morning at 5 a.m. I'm up early. That's 2 a.m. over on the West Coast. I don't know what time that would be for you up in, where are you from? Saskatchewan? Quebec? Pat?
No, I mean like Ottawa, Ontario.
Ottawa. Oh, you're you're probably in Central Time Zone.
Yeah.
Are you in Eastern? You're still Eastern? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Well, cool. 5 a.m. I do a show called Comics by Night. And lately we've been opening up great books and going through great comics and going through books. We're halfway through the Artisan edition, and it's a huge book. We're talking absolutely big, of Steranko's Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And we get a bunch of us old fogies that love comics and have been doing comics for years to sit there and dissect the work and try not to drool on it too much. As we talk about all of the different aspects of sequential art. This was a lot of fun. We're covering the second half of that Steranko book today, but in the future, you can look forward to episodes where we're looking at Darwin Cook. We're looking at the old 70s Mad magazines. There's a lot of stuff that we'll be covering. It's Comics by Night, 5 a.m. over on the Indie Comics Network, YouTube, indiecomicsnetwork.com. We'll get you there as well. Also on Sunday morning, I do a show at 9 a.m. Sundays, where we talk about comics, the comics that we love, the comics that inspired us, that keep us inspired to keep doing more sequential art. That's the Sunday Funnies at 9 a.m. on Sunday, and everybody's invited over there as well. This Sunday, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but that's usually the way it works. The conversation ends up wandering in all sorts of strange directions. So we'll try to make a theme before now and Sunday and have a show. So, and then of course we'll be back here probably at 10 p.m. for the next ZimmCast. We deeply appreciate everybody out there that's listened to this point. We want to, before we leave, I want to tell you a couple things. I want to tell you to go out and talk to your local retailer. Go and visit your local comic shop. Go through those boxes that aren't normally going through. Look through those magazine boxes. Look through for the boxes that might have a little dust on them. And go through and look at those books, because there's gold out there for you to find. There's some great, phenomenal comics. You just have to look. You just have to look and find them. You might not find them on the new comic shelf. There's still one or two of those, and the hunting is difficult. Very rarely do I hear anybody talking about how great the modern comics are and what ones are really, really good right now. But you'll still see shows like ours and shows like Comic Kayfabe and videos out there who talk about how great comics are. And it's up to us. It's up to not just the creators, but the fans, the readers out there to keep this art form alive. We need to do it. If you find a comic that you like, tell people about it. Old, new, whatever. Just read, got a couple of old Eries and Creepies. I've got a whole stack of books here for us to talk about at one point or another that are just great sequential art, and it'll be great. And again, remember, folks, especially if you have a crowdfunding campaign out there, if you're doing sequential art right now and you're crowdfunding, you're doing stuff on your own, you're working in the alternative and independent market, you are in such a sweet spot right now, better than ever. Back in the 80s, when I first started publishing, through the 90s and the 2000s, we did alternative and independent comics just for the love of it. And now, thanks to crowdfunding and whatever other avenue that you can find out there, digitally, webtoons or whatever, you can make a little profit, you can make a little money. You can actually make a living doing this now, doing what you love. And that's what's so important in this industry. Follow that passion and be the magician, be the wizard that you know that you are, and entertain people. That's the whole key. And show off the power of comics. Don't just use it as a soapbox. Don't just get preachy and then run. Tell an entertaining story. Make people want more. Make people beg for more, like Burroughs did with Tarzan, Baum did with the Oz books. There's so much creativity out there in the market now, and so many great campaigns. Make sure you look around on that. We're looking, Luke Stone is looking to start a crowdfunding platform himself, fundmycomic.com, just to try to get away from the Kickstarters and the Indiegogos and the hassles that are plaguing them now with exposure and shadow banning and all of this, because they say they comics for them is just such a small percentage of profit, just like with the corporations, like with the Disney and with Warner. As long as they can keep something out there to keep people coming to their site, that's all that they're concerned about. But Fund My Comics will be looking at comics and games and specializing on those campaigns, promoting people out there trying to sell their stuff and trying to gain a foothold and a readership and a reliable group of folks that they can make a little bit of profit off of while they entertain you. And that's the whole point of doing this business. We do it for the love of it. We do it to entertain folks. And then if we're able to pay our bills with that, that's just the topping on the cake. Any other final words, Mitch?
Yes, buy my crap or buy my shit.
Buy my shit. Yeah.
I almost said crap, but that would have sounded wrong.
Buy independent and alternative comics, especially ours. Look at that Echoes of the Triumphant over on Kickstarter, 0 through 3. Make sure you go over to aerocomics.store. Take a look at the stuff there. There's a lot more stuff coming, folks. We're going to have a big year next year, hopefully. It's looking really positively. More Hero Bots coming. Aniverse is coming. I'm going to finish off my COVID book, and we'll get that out there as well. And we'll just pick it up from there.
How's
folks,
the history of comics coming?
It's not at the moment. It's been sitting here gathering dust in pages, sitting right up here on top of the computer. I think about it often. I'm doing a history of comics, Pat, and I'm 40 pages in, and I'm
Okay.
right to the creation of Wonder Woman and the start of World War II. Looking forward to getting that done. That's on the list after. I might end up doing Anniverse before that, because every time I do a show lately, people are asking about Tales from the Anniverse. That's a book that I kicked out back in the mid 80s, back with Arrow Comics. Still got people remembering the title and those characters. It's a funny animal space opera. It's the easiest way to describe it.
I just finished. Last year I read the Stan Lee biography, and it was pretty incredible. Like,
yeah,
just the last couple decades of his life, it was like a true crime sort of thing. So
sad and tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I didn't know that
Very
until I read
crazy.
the book. But
Yep.
yeah, it's
There's
there's always
enough.
something there that surprises you. You know.
Yeah, there's not enough really good comic book history books out there. That's why I was working on one. And the really, really good ones are kind of out of print, or there's holes in them and their history, and there just really needs to be a good definitive history of comics out there for everybody to know how great, how powerful comics are. It's a lot of fun. Folks, again, thank you so much for watching. Deeply appreciate you being here, and we will talk soon. Take care, everybody. I got things lined up. We'll see you.
Have a question or comment for us to address on the show? Have a topic you want us to talk about? Email us at indiecomicsnetwork@gmail.com. Want your comics to arrive in pristine condition? Head over to GeminiComicSupply.com and save 10% on your next Gemini mailer order or anything in the Gemini Comic Supply store. Use coupon code RAGIN10. That's RAGIN 10.
See, I got both the contact us and the Gemini code on the same video, and I keep cutting off the Gemini code. So, folks, you want to go over to GeminiComicSupply.com, use the code RAGIN10 as you go out from your purchases, and they'll knock 10% off for you. I think that's RAGIN. I think it's 10. Yeah, RAGIN10. Go over there and do that. Great people, great products. It'll be great. Take care, everybody.
Who's your favorite Marvel Comics hero? Mine is Superman. Remember the motto? With great power comes great responsibility.
Why? Because fuck them, that's why.
See, I keep hitting it and it doesn't activate. I have to hit it a couple times now. Here we go.